Check, testing. Just going to do a quick test, make sure that we're good. If you can hear. Testing. Yep, cool. Alright, we are good. Welcome to today's stream, a little bit later than what it is. I decided to have a 15-minute sleep in. And on this wonderful Saturday morning. I hope you guys stick around. We're going to be carrying on with our web scraper, focusing on a little bit more on that. And yeah, see how we go. Obviously, actually one thing I totally forgot to do. It'll be fine. I totally forgot to change my titles. But it's still the same thing. We're still building a web scraper and we're just messing around with it, so... Oh well. Yeah, so... welcome to my stream. Yeah, today we're going to be working on the web scraper. So I'm just going to close this down. So what we've done is we've got a HTML, we've got an Azure Function app, which is basically running running some PowerShell code to scrape a website, and we're going to be using that info to actually send to Azure Sentiment Analysis to actually do some sentiment on users' forum posts. So it's going to be interesting stuff. See how we go. Stick around and we'll see if we can get some outcomes from this. Alrighty, I'm going to change some scenes here so everyone can see my screen, and we will get stuck into it. Yeah, so let's get going. So, where were we last time? We were having issues with loading the DLLs. So what I did was I chucked them all in here, didn't I? Yeah, I chucked them all in here. Okay, so... Alright, so what we're going to need to do... let's just run it, work out where we were when we last left off, and we'll kind of just go from there. Okay, we got a few-ish errors there. We got a lot of errors. Okay, let's go. Yes, classes. Okay, so the issue that we had was that classes had dependencies on these types. And because the type wasn't it doesn't load. Yeah, okay. So because the type isn't loaded, we need to we kind of need to scoot that around and create a custom function to actually do that. So essentially, we need to actually have function, which essentially will produce a PS object instead. So essentially we're going to have to take a lot of this code and clean it up. So I'm just looking at what we need to do here. Okay. Okay. So what we might do is we'll write the code, the logic in the actual function app. So within the function itself, and then we'll reload it, and then we'll move it back into the profile. So call it new user. So we got this username. Okay, so this is going to be our return object. So what we're going to need to do. Just going to call this user, and then we're just going to go PS custom object. And these are going to be attributes. Oh, sorry, properties. Attributes. Now I can be explicit, which I probably will be here. Alrighty, so pretty tired. And then we've got this method here, which essentially takes the user posts, a string, and then populates that data. So what we can do here, our parameter name, it can be mandatory. I'm just going to call this posts. And then we need a string. So essentially you can see we're setting the username. So we can just do this. You can literally just build it out. First scene. You can literally grab posts. Ooh. Ooh, 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 ooh. And then we can just put posts, like so. And that's pretty much it. So we can pretty much use that. It's kind of hilarious because that's really all it's doing. So it can definitely, it's quite an easy function to, or an easy class to refactor into a function. Just going to clean this up a bit. And it's just returning a PS custom object back to the user. So we fixed that. And it's just going to be PS custom object that's going to pass. And then we have, so let's get rid of that. Now we have user post. This is a little bit more tricky that we're going to need to refactor. So let's just kind of new user post. Parameters. Like so, what do we got here? We've got just convert. That's taking this specific type, this type, you know, I wonder, I actually just had a thought. I wonder if I can just say an object. Oh, it's bad, like it's obviously, it's better to be type specific. But I reckon, if we do it that way, then we're yeah, we're good. So quickly send a quick text. Alright, so, because I just had a thought, I'm like, if I specify this type within a function, I think I'm going to have the same issue. We might too, because thinking, what basically, I think we're going to have the same issue. To be honest, I like it to be function versus a class is better actually. This is better suited as a class. Alright, so we're going to do. Undo all that. I'm going to see. We've got new user, like that can stay there. Let's just. Just gonna give it a generic object. Let's see what happens now. Yep, that works because the type is obviously known to PowerShell. It's gonna be interesting whether it works or not. So let's give it a go. I better jump on Hot Copper. Let's just use dboss. He's the first guy I saw. What's the username? Oh, name. So, and then we go name. Yep. We can actually just go. We can go ahead and biff that because we're going to just do REST queries to our endpoint via sentiment analysis. So we're not actually going to. We don't need any sort of direct interaction with Azure. Oops, I think I just hit escape. I did. Alright, let's do this again. Let's see what happens. Error, missing username. Good start, good start. Just going to drop a breakpoint on that. And we're going to go await debugger, like so. Just going to check, yep, we've stopped. Let's go ahead and restart. Oh yeah, few errors. What do we got? Cannot use a method on null value. Okay, so that's to do with. I'm gonna just need to switch that to throw then. Now let's have a look at request dot query. Right, it's looking for username. It's not going to get it. And it's going to finish up. And that's fine. So what we can do here, just go ahead and restart. Quick find and replace. Drop a breakpoint there. Okay, can't find the agility pack. 1 second. Alright, so what we need to do here. Let's just do a quick reload. Oh, we failed. That's fine. I'm just going to have a look at what the path is, see if it can actually load it. If it can, great, good to go. Alright. Alright, you need to stop and reinsert that breakpoint. Actually, should be able to add an inline one. Alright. Okay, so that's stopped, so we just need to restart this. It's just not wanting to add. Oh no, because I've got to add the add weight debugger on that. One sec. I'm like, why is this not working? I've got to add weight debugger. Where's weight debugger? Once I do that, then we should be good. Let's go have a look. Restart. Alright, let's have a look. Where is it looking at? Exists. Ah! Made my little boo-boo there. Let's go ahead and stop this. Need to add a knot there because what I'm doing is I'm saying if the path exists, then fail, but we know that that's exactly what it's doing. It's saying path exists, okay, fail. Well, the path the path doesn't exist, and we just need to flip the bit. Alright, so that's done. Let's go ahead and head back to our code. That's the randomest breakpoint I've ever seen in my life. Why the F is it there? When the breakpoint was, what's 268? Yeah, that's where the breakpoint is. Okay, whatever. So it's having a good hard think. Posting message lookup, so it's actually running lookups. What did that do? Message lookup. Okay, so it's responded, and okay, we've got a lot of content. And message body, nothing. Okay, so it is responding, which is good. Alright, so you can see here we're ripping it out, which is good. Now we've fixed that part. So let's see if we can offload these classes and this majority of that logic back into the actual profile. So let's go ahead and do that. Since the class is not dependent, it should be fine. So let's get rid of that, move that into our profile. I'm actually going to comment this out because we don't actually need it. Since we're telling it, hey, use generic objects, it should be a little more forgiving. Convert to rest body. Okay, there's a few functions there. Alright. So we're going to add our DLLs. All that content is being added in the parent profile. So all we need, I can actually probably just go ahead and remove that, is this. And it's relying on that data. So let's go ahead and rerun this and see if that works now. So now our function app's restarted. Let's go ahead and re-trigger. Yeah, go ahead and run. Okay, you can see it's smashing it, so I would say that that's working. So what it's doing is it's hitting each of these threads. See, it's still thinking. I think this definitely needs to be moved into a durable function. So what I could probably do is just wrap this inside a durable function. Oh, actually, we could probably use PowerShell durable functions to actually do this, which would actually be a better way to do it. And to be honest, each of these lookups that it's doing, they can be asynchronous, and we can actually use durable functions to even handle that. And basically just say wait till they're all done, and then from that we can then have just a single kind of go and fetch. So you can see here it's completed it, and then we have our JSON response. So let's go have a look at that. So you can see here we've got let's just jump on number 5, and then we've got some actual content that it's pulled out. He actually has a lot of content, and he's got 197 posts that we know about. So that's interesting. And we can obviously see our tags. So we've got a fair bit of good stuff there. Now the next thing we need to do is, if we look at this a little closer though, this needs to be cleaned up a bit in terms of the text is not great. I honestly think we can probably clean that up a little bit. So I'll show you what I mean, because it's still fairly raw. We basically need to escape a lot of content. I saw ampersands in there. I live in Adelaide. There you go. So things like this, I wonder, so what we can actually do is, I'm actually interested in this thread. I wonder who see, I think this is what, and then sentiment analysis is not going to like that. It just wants sentences, it doesn't want all this kind of jazz. So what we can do is probably do a giant regex replace, remove non-sentence structure Well, it's actually pretty tough because you can see it's fairly. Oh, I don't think we can do that because we're gonna literally every character can technically be used. Oh, excuse me. I reckon we need to have a look at this. So let's go grab this thread. I'm just gonna chuck this in Notepad. I'm gonna have a quick look at it so I can actually understand what's going on. Hopefully I can just paste this straight in. Not surprising. I'm just gonna go. What was it? Watching JB. Time, and this is really where it's quite cool, so we can actually just grab the details. Date posted 2020. Okay, something's not right there. We need to fix that up. 2020, 1st of the 8th. Reason why is because it doesn't give you a time, it only gives you a date. Okay, so it's going to be one of these ones. Just have a quick. We can actually just do this. That actually should have worked. Page 5. Apparently it's not there. Have a quick look at all of them until we can find the one we want. It's not that one. 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 Huh, interesting. So where is it getting it? Because the post literally doesn't exist unless it got deleted. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, it got deleted because it's no longer there. Because the last one was just flagged as duplicate. Unless it's this one. No. But you can see, like, because the content's so raw, we've kind of got to have a bit, it's got to be quite hard to kind of to deal with. So, like, for example, we've got emojis and things like that. So we're obviously having rich text. We kind of need that to get that essentially into plain text. What do we got here? Okay, so that's HTML. So there's, like, you can see there, that's nested HTML within it. So we need to Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to open up another IC. I'm just going to go and work with this. We can just go ahead and do this. Let's go result equals. Finish. Let that run, and then we can basically just work with the JSON response. I kind of just want to have a look at the methods body and just kind of work out what we need to filter out to kind of make this work. I want to get the message essentially down to its bare bones, no extra characters that it needs to have in that, so that we can then send it straight on to we can then go through the messages. So if we go result, there we go, let's just go posts, and let's just go message body. I just want to have a good look at all the messages. Man, he is a big fan of dots. I feel like you could like play a drinking game with that. Anyway, so things like we've got amps, we've got random. So essentially, we've got rich text in there technically, and we need to pull rich text out. You can see here, and okay, it looks like it's actually rich text. It's URL encoded. So we could probably go ahead and write, or we can actually just see if we can parse it. I just want to see what that is. Single quotation mark. Okay. So we need to decode, essentially get rid of that that HTML. So we need to decode that. So that's easy, I think. HTML decode. Actually, what we can do, I just want to do this for a sec, because then it'll tell me what's gonna do. So your results will appear here. Just go and code. Oh, sorry. No, we're gonna go. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're gonna decode. Start over. Start over. Start over. Decode URL. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna need to do is just decode our URL. Decode our URLs. Or, so what we can do. I know there's a HTML decoder class. HTML decode. C#. Good old Stack Overflow. HTTP utility HTML decode. Alright. Let's have a bit of a look at this and see if what it will be able to do what we need it to do. So let's just give this a go. So what we can do is just go system.web. And you know what? I'm literally just going to copy and paste that in there and see what it does. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There you go. Look at that. So we just go ahead and decode it that way. So what we can do now is let's head back to our function. Just stopped it. And let's go ahead and decode that. So let's go back in here, and we need to actually we're going to need to go to class. So I've got to use a post here. Subject display message body. So we actually just get post content. So down in here. So it goes and fetches it, it passes it, fetches the content, and then let's just decode it. Alright, let's re-trigger this and see what happens. Just gonna clear our screen and run that. So if we go back here, you can see it's triggering. Now we need to continue, and it's running those lookups on that specific user. Someone just IM'd me. You can see it takes a while, so yeah, like I said, we can definitely make this an asynchronous operation. Don't know how Hot Copper's going to feel about that, because essentially I'm going to be doing over 100 lookups all at once in one hit. I do think that's a bit of a denial of service attack. So that's the reason why I've kind of just sequentially done it, just because it puts less load on their servers. So now we should have a result. Let's go have a look at our body. So posts. Let's just go message body. Oh, gotta pay my energy bill. Okay. I'll snooze that for 4 hours. Alright, so so you can see here we've cleaned it up a bit. We shouldn't want to sell, unit volume. Okay, so it looks like it's a lot more cleaned up. Honestly, this drives me bonkers. I wonder if sentiment analysis can actually handle that. And then say, hey, this guy really loves his dots. And I wonder what it tells us about him. So it looks like it's so much cleaner now. You can see we've actually got a lot more good content. Okay, good. Let's actually start doing that. Let's go set up sentiment analysis. This is going to slow it down even more, significantly more. Actually, before we do that, I kind of want to have a look at what we need to do sentiment analysis across it. So we're just going to get sentiment. So if we go have a look at get sentiment, what's it doing? I think I need to go and put a key in there. Get sentiment. Oh lol. Using an APIM subscription key. Sentiment analysis is built on API management, because that's a header for APIM. Obviously, because it's got APIM in it. So, it looks like what it's doing here is it's iterating through each get sentiment user post where message body is not equal to blah. And then what it's trying to do is it's trying to do a single request, but that's not going to work, so we're going to need to fix that up. Alright, I'm just going to take a quick 5-minute break. I'm going to grab some water. I'm going to say hello to my wife, and we will be back in a moment. Alright, we're back. Let's continue on. So essentially here we've got oh, let's make sure mic's good. Yep, mic's good. So what we got here, we need to actually need to look at, well, first I think we need to build sentiment analysis now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Services. We actually had it running. Okay. Oh, we're going to need to get a new key. Let's go ahead and delete and recreate. So you can't refresh. That doesn't matter. I'm going to bin this at the end of this anyway. Grab your keys and endpoint. Okay, well, we'll just keep it for the time being because we're going to bin it at the end. That's I want text cognitive services. I don't want cognitive services. Is that the same thing, or what? What is this? Let's have a quick look. Because if it is the same, then we'll just smash it. I don't know if I could just bin it at the end of this. Service API. Just having a quick look for the endpoint. So you can tell me the REST endpoint, and we can go from there. Yep, don't care about that. API, that's what I'm looking for. Sentiment analysis, use sentiment analysis, key phrase extraction, language detection. Oh man, we're going to be running key phrase extraction. We're just going to run everything on them. Text analysis, okay, so got that. Where is... So we can... It looks like... Okay, document size must have... Yep, and you must... And you can have up to 1,000 IDs per collection. A collection is submitted in the body. Okay, so we can submit up to 1,000 requests in one body. That's what it looks like, and we do need the ID. The collection is submitted in the body of the request. The following example is what you might submit for a key phrase extraction. Your custom subdomain API cognitive services. Oh, that's key phrase extraction. That's not text analysis. So if we look at that. So what we got, yep. Okay, so cognitive services, text analytics. Cognitive services, text analytics, preview 1, sentiment. If that's the case, your custom subdomain. I don't have a custom subdomain. Oh, well, I'm just going to grab that for the time being. We're just going to run 3.1 preview, or 3 preview. Okay, yes. So it's the same approach. Post request to sentiment endpoint using a personalized ICT. Okay, so that would be the ID sentiment documents. My concern is how many of these can we bundle in a hit and then fire it over. See the data limits. $200 requests a second, 300 a minute. Maximum size of a single document of a single request. Okay, so it needs to be less than 5,000. So there's a few things here. I'm not going to write all of it in that because that's too much thinking right now. But we just need to make sure we can batch that safely. I think there's going to be more than 5,000 characters. Let's just have a quick look. Dot post dot message posts dot message body. And where we got that, let's just go then blank. That's 198 lines. Let's just join it all together. Join. Oh. Yeah, so that's not going to be possible. We've got what? 480, not 4,000, 48,000. So I think what we could probably do is we're just gonna sing a how many requests? There's like 120, so it can do 300 a minute. I'm gonna batch it in groups of 5, I think. Just gonna batch them in groups of 5 for the time being. It'll just hard code it to 5. That makes it a bit easier to manage. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and that's the one I want. Cognitive services can go. Text services. Text analytics. Create. I'm just going to call this live stream. I'm just going to put it in Australia. So we'll see what the cheapest is there. I'm going to try and go for maybe this one. They all pretty much do the same thing, but I'm just like, we're only literally the most basic. Oh, what's S? 1,000 calls a minute. Standard? Is there free? Kind of weird because it says F 5,000 transactions per 30 days. I would say that's free, or it's like ridiculously high performance. Oh my god. This is kind of really dumb, to be honest, because you don't know the differences. Like, let's just say free. Like, oh my god, that's. Okay, it's definitely like, S is not that, so I can't assume. I'm just gonna say S. That's fine. And if I get billed for it, then I'm gonna whinge about it to Microsoft and tell them to put me on the free tier. Alright, cool. While that's deploying, we can carry on with this. So what we're going to do is do batching of 5, and we will then focus on that. So essentially we've got posts, where blah. So the first thing we need to do is be able to actually group this in groups of 5. So there's a few ways we can do this. We could either do it through a for loop. Alternatively, we can use potentially group objects to do this as well. I'm just thinking Alright, so what we're going to do here is we need to basically group that data. So let's go ahead and do that. G'day Anthony, how you going, mate? I'm well. I hope you're doing well. How's the job hunt going, mate? So I'm thinking. Oh, you're still focused. Oh, you're learning Python at the moment. Yeah, that's right. I totally forgot. You're actually going to do you're doing your degree. Yeah, cool. So and obviously hating Python. Python is a good language. I like Python. But I can understand why people get a little bit upset about it because it's a different way of writing code, especially when you come from like .NET and PowerShell, and then you go to Python, and Python's kind of more. It's similar syntax. It's just it's got its own nuances which really can trip you up. So you kind of got to be very careful. But at the same time, though, Python's still a great language. It's very fast. That's why people use Python. It's very fast. So what I'm doing here is message. I'm just gonna quickly see what's going on here. Just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna add K, but I'm not actually AFK. I'm just muting my screen. Are you using Azure for sentiment analysis or something running on a GPU? Okay. So, 1 second. I'm just going to click back. So, if you're watching, essentially what I'm doing is I'll be using I'm going to be using Azure for sentiment analysis. However, we have a few RTX cores, Tensor cores in my house, and the goal is to start running it against. Essentially, sentiment analysis is one component of this entire project. Yeah, I'm web scraping and running sentiment analysis, but the conception here is my idea is to basically get their sentiment, get the stock price at the time. So essentially I'll be capturing for a specific stock, let's say Commonwealth Bank for instance, or JB Hi-Fi or something like that, essentially capturing that stock, capturing every trade for that stock, using all that data, and then basically correlating it with user sentiment analysis and other cloud technologies to be able to actually work out based on the trading volume, the trading amount, the trading type, the units that have been bought and sold, all those kinds of little bits and pieces to work out essentially a rough to work out who are the fund managers that are basically trying to game the market, and that who are not. So it's basically what it's doing is it's using all this different information and then trying to actually make predictions based on people's actions, because essentially every person that makes a post, whether that's a social, will have an agenda, and that agenda is going to be a social agenda, or that's going to be an actual legitimate business agenda. And my goal is to target those specific people to be able to actually identify the key people and essentially flag them
so that we can then, using that information, that we can obviously then start predicting stock price movements. So it also helps when you have that information and you can know that there's a correlation between these two people. Like, so let's say you've got one person here saying, you know, the stock we should buy because the stock's undervalued and blah blah blah, and then at the same time the stock price is going up. We obviously, most people will say, hey, you know, yeah, this guy's what we call an up ramper. And then all of a sudden you'll see a dry dip in the stock or a slow trend down. So these kinds of things, but the thing is that we can then use that data that is bought, so all that data that was traded, or the data that we mined from the trades themselves, so how much was bought, the volume, all that kind of data, we can then start to actually associate that data loosely to that person. So this is how this is their trading habit essentially, and we can build fingerprints for different people. And the whole premise is that once we can start building fingerprints, and I can use machine learning to build those fingerprints, then essentially we can actually start to work out who is who, and at the same time how they are going to play, so, and what their agenda is at that time. So that's the whole premise of it. If you're watching, what the point of this is really. But yes, the goal is to use GPUs to mine that data, because that's we're going to be obviously using a fair bit of, that's going to require some deep learning to actually handle, but that's the premise of this kind of task. The first step is sentiment analysis, because we need to actually fully understand the intention of the message. So Azure Sentiment Analysis can do that for us. I don't really want to have to reinvent the wheel, but for trading habits and things like that, that's going to require a fair bit of deep learning to be able to actually and a lot of machine learning to kind of funnel that much data. Like, there's a lot of data to read. We're talking thousands and thousands of lines of thousands and thousands of trades. So yeah, so it's going to be an interesting project. It's something that I've kind of just yeah, I've been working on for a little while. So, a little while. I've been working on for a tiny amount of time. Anyway, moving forward, we need to actually make some changes. So we need to actually look at batching our sentiment analysis up. So what we've got here is our initial post. Okay, yeah. So what we're doing previously is trying to work out how to. We're just going to batch this in 5. I want to get this kind of working, and then we can kind of get that. We can then fix that up. Sentiment analysis in retrieving. The only issue I have, which at the moment is a bit of a concern, is that you can see it's only got the date, which is a pain in the backside. Oh, it does have the time there. I need to scrape the time out, because then once I can scrape the time out, and you can also see the price of posting is 6.6 cents. So using that as data, you can essentially timestamp the message to the actual to the actual stock market. So that's actually really quite cool. While we're using sentiment analysis engaging statement, this will be used. Out. Alright, so essentially what we're going to do now is we need to actually go ahead. I need to work out what the easiest way to kind of sort through this. So let's go ahead and post dot message. I think we just or I'll just do an I equals 0. I is less than results dot count, and then we can just go I is plus 5. Just batching it. To be honest, if this is going to be a fully featured product, it would need to actually look at each post, and then essentially you would look how many characters I have. Does it meet the limit? No, it doesn't. Okay, add another post. Does it meet the limit? Yep. Okay, send the previous one. Then that's how you kind of need to do it. So you kind of need to break it down that way, which is going to make it a lot more difficult to do. So for the time being, we're just going to get this. I'm just going to kind of batch it in groups of 5, so I can at least see we can get some sentiment out of it. And I'm just going to go right host, and then we're just going to go I, because I want to see this work. So let's run. Okay, so that's not working as an infinite loop, so I'm just going to go I is plus 5. Yep, so you can see that's pretty good. Sweet. So we can go ahead and grab that, chuck that in here. My database class has been interesting and annoying, lol. I've been reading my textbooks and spending time with you and Christian, and I ended up answering every question from the lecturer in my class now when he ever asks a question and just stares at me. I actually told him the other day to leave me alone and ask smart else. That's the right attitude to have. I think if you basically have that attitude, you kind of, you're going to go a long way. A long way. I think it's kind of a little annoying though, because yeah, as when you're the lecturer, you're just kind of like, I just wish like someone like, people don't want to answer the question because they don't want to look like an idiot. But at the same time though, it's like that the whole South Park when with on the South Park movie with Cartman and he asked the question. And it's like, okay, come on guys, give it your best shot. And it's like, and he's like, okay Clive, and he's like, 12, okay, let's get an answer from someone else. And I feel like that's what the lecturers are gonna like. You get towards the end of, you know, you're doing this day in and day out, and you just want someone to answer the question so you can move on. So, but yeah, I totally understand, man. I totally understand. But it's a good thing to have, because it means that basically you're actually like, your lecturer does like you, because and he knows that you actually know the answer. So yeah, anyway. So what we can do here is we need to actually step in groups of 5. So what we're going to do, I'm actually intrigued now to see if there's any message body that basically has blank, and there better not bloody be, because I'm not going to be happy. Which to be honest, I think there's going to be. Because if it's blank, sentiment analysis doesn't like it. Result dot post dot message body. So it's too bad we can't actually look at GIFs. What is the count? Yeah, okay, there's 36 there that are blank. That's going to be interesting, because if there's 36 of them are blank, we're going to need. The question is, do I just do I literally just strip them out? You know what? I think it's actually easier. Yeah, it makes the class that go faster. But at the same time, the other people should get involved. That's 100% true. 100% true. Other people should actually be paying attention and trying to get involved. And also, like you said, I think it also other people need to have the opportunity to actually be challenged, because if they're not, they're just going to basically sit there and cruise. The least effort principle. Do absolutely the least amount of effort to get the job done. So what we could probably do here, like, I'm actually not happy with the fact that it's blank. Like, I'm either going to remove it out of the post entirely for the time being, so that we can actually get accurate matching. Because essentially, what I need to do is I need to match the ID in the actual request. The language and the ID need to be specified. So if I'm passing an ID in, that ID needs to correlate to the ID of the array item. So what does that mean for me is that means we need to basically, I could just clean them all out. That's an option. The problem is of that issue. But I think we still need it, and what we're going to do is what we're going to do. So we're going to get the sentiment. So we're going to get away. We're going to get all the user. We're going to fetch all user posts that don't contain a message. Then what we're going to do is we're going to basically get we're going to just use that data, and then on the back end we're going once we've got the sentiment, we're then going to reconstruct it, and basically we're just going to iterate through the IDs are literally we're going to rematch it. We're just going to literally iterate through the original array, and then we're going to rematch it. And if it's we can match that the message body is blank, it'll skip it, and then it'll go to the next item. So therefore, we're not going to have a mismatched array. It's a loose match, as per se. It's loosely matching to it, but it will be definite in the sense that it allows us to still reconstruct everything and still retain any blank post, because I can guarantee you blank posts contain GIFs or emojis, and those things we're going to need to use emoji analysis. Too bad we don't have Heidi Turner here. She'll be able to do the emoji analysis for us, but essentially we can then do image analysis on the GIFs. So that's something we can do in the future, but for the time being we kind of need to make this sentiment work, of this process work. So fetch all user posts that contain a message. I'm going to iterate through them. I'm just going to iterate through groups. Like, oh, should I just write this properly? Should I write this properly? Yeah, we should write this properly. So what we need to do, this is actually going to be interesting. So we need to declare the limits of our requests. So structure our request, create a post request, review API documentation, post request. So maximum size of a single document. So I'm guessing actually that's going to be a single document for yeah, that's a single post. So if it's a multi-post, we then need to go and grab basically just like stupid dots. people in their friggin' 4,000 dots. It drives me bonkers because we're going to need to go and find, essentially we just need to break it in half based on the end of a sentence at a dot. So we'll need to do that. And then we basically, the size of the entire request. That's going to be interesting because if we have a request that's more than 5,000 characters, how do we handle that? Because essentially what you can, like, the whole premise is to batch the request. And if it's more than 5,000 characters, then they're doing a massive long post. That's actually going to unravel my loose match, because essentially you're going to have, it's just going to append that to some random post, and you're essentially adding an extra index item to the request. So fun. So that's going to be an interesting thing, how we're going to be able to handle that. Now, I'm still a big fan of batching. I think batching is going to probably be the answer here for efficiency. But at the same time, though, we need to kind of figure out how we going to make this efficient, because I think what we're going to probably need to do here is this is the reason why I wanted to write it and just batch it in groups of 5, but if we need to actually build an engine that can actually take and convert it into the body, that would be preferred. So the problem is we just can't stick something in the body of the request. So we've got, 512 characters. I think what I'm going to need to do here okay, so what I'm thinking is we're going to need to build a class or a function. I think we're just going to build a function. And what it's going to do is it's going to convert all the message posts into a body requests that we can just iterate through and then invoke REST method on. And what the rule is, I think I'm going to write some rules here. We're going to kind of just grab this and we'll write some rules in here. So my rules are, rule number 1, if the request is more than the char limit, we are going to that request will constitute as a single request. That request will be a single REST request. Will be single REST request. So it'll basically be you've got 2 paragraphs of content. It'll basically take those 2, separate the 2, and that's it. It won't add anything else. The tricky part is going to be how we actually group, put them together, because essentially I'm just thinking about how we're going to need to structure this, because essentially we need to be able to actually group those two together without and tell PowerShell that they're grouped together, they're essentially the same, but this other request is different. So essentially I think there's going to need to be another class created to be able to deal with that, or we just use a custom object. But that's rule 1. Rule number 2, limit of 1 meg, split the request. Now this is interesting because this rule will have to be applied prior to actually submission. So essentially you will need to be able to create the requests and look at the size limits, and then from that determine does it need to be split again. That's a big one. But the thing is though, we can literally just trim off the end of the collection, so it'll be a collection of items. I think the way we're going to do this, essentially it'll return a PS custom object. I'm just thinking like something like where you would have so it'll be post. We'll just call it user posts. And then in here you'd have an array of all your user posts. And then here, do we have an array of its matching ID? Like, because ultimately the ID, you could have a loosely tied ID here, so you could say IDs, and essentially that's like the actual index value. Like something like along those lines, like that. So essentially you have the array of user posts, and then you have an array underneath it, which basically corresponds each user post to the ID. And then what we can actually do here, that actually works. And that actually worked really well, because then we can actually do this. So you could have multiple splits, and then it knows it just needs to append it to. We just get it to append it to the object. So if we have a quick squiz at the class, we've got class of user post. We've got an object of sentiment analysis, sentiment results. So what we can probably do here, to be honest, is make an array. And so essentially it could be more than one result, because it might need to split it. And that way we can then cater for that. Okay, I'm actually starting to like this. This actually might be, I won't say quite easy, but it might actually work quite well. Alright, so let's go ahead and just save that. So what we can do here, yeah, I'm liking this approach, because it means that then we keeps it very, very simple. It allows us to group. We can skip whatever we need. If it's blank, who cares? And then we can just, you're just basically adding the index item to it. And as long as that, this is tightly bound to this, who cares? So I think that's fine. So let's go ahead and we need to essentially convert. We don't even need to do this. So essentially we can just take go convert to rest body. We're going to convert this essentially what this would be is a body of the rest method, and then essentially I can just iterate through, pass the body in, pump it out, and then join it back up. Yep. I'm liking this. I'm liking this a lot. Yep, I'm liking this. Okay. So we could actually go one step further. Oh, if you go back to user pose. What's it called? We can actually use the array list, and essentially we can just add a method to that object to basically just go ahead and add it. And so we don't even need to do any sort of work there. Yep, okay, cool. Alright, so what we need to do now is we actually need to write a function to actually convert. That's what I'm actually looking for. Let's see if this actually is going to work. Yeah, that should work. So creating my own object. What I'm going to do here is what I'm doing here is essentially I need to make sure that I've instantiated that object prior to actually going ahead and running it. So that means then all I need to do is go add, and that's it. You can actually even add a custom method which does it for us, but we'll sort that out later. Alright, so we're making progress now. So what we need to do here is we need to add another function, and we need to convert to rest body. Already got it. So what's that convert? I'm just going to call it to rest. Yes, convert to rest body. Now we'll just use this one, and we're going to get rid of all this crap. Body documents. And it's going to just build it out for us. Okay, so it takes the user posts. We're going to clean this up a bit. So it takes the user posts, creates a PS custom object, system collection, and it's going to iterate through each of these. So what we need to do is that. So we're actually going to process this normally. And what we're going to do is we're going to cast a custom object. This is a tough one because essentially you're batching and you need to create the object in the process block to actually do this. I'm kind of thinking out loud at the moment. Posts. Oh man, this is like mind-bending right now. I'm literally kind of trying to articulate how to... I'm trying to do two things and they're very, very complicated right now. So essentially the first thing I'm trying to do is take the data. So essentially you've got to input the data and then I need to, in the process block, at the same time I need to compare it against the existing data, make sure it doesn't meet any sort of limits or hits any sort of limits, and then basically adds it. If it doesn't add it, it needs to then output the existing object into the return collection and then create a new one. So it's a very interesting thing that we've got going here. So So we have custom. Oh, let's just call this rest body. Let's call this rest body. So essentially, what we need is our message. I'm just going to call this body matching ID. Oh, I'm just going to call it index or matching index. So essentially, we've got two arrays that basically we can use. So essentially here, what we need to do now, we can declare I'm literally having a mind blank at the moment. This needs to be in here. Oh. So once I've done that, I can pretty much it's always declared, so it's going to be declared on initialization. That's fine. So for the first time round, it'll be declare, and then what we can do here. So then we're going to iterate through each user post. Oh, we're going to. We need. Okay, so we're going to read the user post. We're going to basically then match against char limit. So this is our first rule. So we're going to need to get out. man, this is really mind-bending. Like, this is honestly really mind-bending, this function, because it's dynamically building it out, the bodies, and it's gonna automatically build, size it according. Oh man, my mind is literally on fire at the moment. Alright, so what we're going to need to do is need to match against the character limit. So what we're going to need to do is we need to say the current post, which is user post, dot message body, this needs to be in a dude. Until, and what we need to do is we need to get the message body. Post.message body. We need to declare a variable like message body, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say do, and then in here, I'm going to say until I'm going to say message body. We're also going to declare we're going to declare some constants. Char limit. What was it? 5,120. Then we're going to say size limit, and then we're going to say request limit. I'm going to say 1,000, like that. And so then basically what we can do is we can go ahead and read the user post. So match against the character limit. So we've got our message body. We're then going to basically say do until message body is less than char limit, like so. And then what we're going to do here actually no, we're going to flip this around. We are going to use a while loop. Message body is less than char limit. Like so. While. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to test it. And then what we can do here is we need to split the string so is the PowerShell conference in the US still happening at this point? A lot of stuff has been postponed or cancelled with this virus scare. The latest announcement that was thrown up by James. Let me just see if I can jump into Slack. Let me just see if there's any new news. There's a lot that's going on there at the moment, so I'm kind of like having trouble keeping up. The channel is literally full. Oh my god, it is exploding at the moment. Literally this. Let me just see if I can grab James's post. don't think it's going to be happening in Australia. Like at the end of the day, we can't travel. So like for me, I don't think I can go because here we go, copyright. Just because of the fact that there's a good chance that they're not going to let me through the airport. Latest update, as of today, events through March 31st will be cancelled. So essentially the US government's put basically a mass gathering hold until the 31st of March, which summit's happening in April. But they haven't made a decision yet on April, which puts us in an odd spot, 100%. We are allowed to host the event, but we believe that it may not be in the public's best interest to do so. So we truly want to host Summit, but we're also rescheduling. But we also considering rescheduling the event because, like you, we also have concerns about attending an event in Bellevue area during this time. Working conference with our hotel providers, and yeah. So essentially, nothing has been locked in yet, but we're going to probably find out within the next 7 to 10 days. So I think right now I can't go. Like, there's just not option. It's not an option at all. And I expect, to be honest, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And what I mean by worse, I mean a lot more people are going to get infected. Until we actually get over the infection rate hump, and then the media decides to move on to something new, it's just not going to be it's not going to be an option. And so essentially everyone, yeah. So I don't know when it's going to be rescheduled. I hope it's going to be later in the year because then it kind of gives us an opportunity to kind of settle things down. The talks are still relevant. Everybody's still good. And then yeah. But if we're yeah. So. But if it's kind of obviously in May or something like that, I don't think it's going to be possible. So once we actually know, it's going to be good because it means that I can potentially, I know I've booked with Virgin, so Virgin and Christian's booked with Virgin as well, which means we can reschedule for free. I'm hoping because of that I can reschedule my flights and then I can somehow get my points back. Because I did use points to upgrade my flights, so I'm hoping I can get my points back. But it's all up in the air at the moment. I'm not really thinking about it because, to be honest, my main focus is getting the talk finished. Once that's done, then if it can't be presented, I can go present it at NDC or somewhere else. But I still have a sneaking suspicion they're going to try and reschedule because at the end of the day, though, you kind of got to do something. You can't do nothing. So. But I totally feel for the guys because with the user group, we've been in discussions for about 2 weeks now, trying to work out what the best approach is. Do we cancel all our meetups? Do we go ahead and do online only? Things like that. So yeah, it's a really tough time to be an event organizer right now. And it's really hard because people are paid money. And so how do you handle that? But anyway, yeah. So while we've got that, we need to split our string. Now this is going to be interesting because we just can't split it. Yeah, that's exactly right. It kind of, yeah. So my idea is, this is actually going to be a hard thing because we need to get a string, like blah blah blah. Let's just say, which has multiple. And you just don't want to split. You don't particularly just want to split on every full stop because the concern is our mate the dotter, who loves to dot everything. It makes it quite difficult. So what I think we can do is we basically half it. So we get this is actually going to get even more interesting because essentially what we need to do, this is actually going to become a recursive function itself. Because the problem is that we need to split it recursively, because if we don't, we're going to have issues. So what we need to do is build a function that can essentially split a string multiple times in the middle at the closest full stop. That is going to be a tough one, because you're really now pushing the limits of it. When I say limits, it's a real, like that, we're writing some really difficult logic now. So we actually need to, that needs to be a recursive thing. Driving the taxi today, trying to get to work well. Catch you later, mate. Have all the best with everything. No worries, Anthony. You have a good day, mate, and take it. Be safe out there. Wash your hands. So I think split sentence. I'm gonna call it split paragraph. And so what we need to do is do a begin. This is gonna, we're writing some crazy logic. This is blowing out of proportion right now. We need to split our paragraph. So essentially, what we're going to need to do here is we need to create a list. And so what we can do here is it looks at so paragraph dot length, and I'm just going to put a char limit. Oops, we don't want a manifest, we want a mandatory. We need to split so ID our we need to put a thingy on it, char limit, like so. And what we can do is say paragraph length is equal to char limit. We need to now, length is equal to the limit, which is greater than should we just say less than, then we can go paragraphs dot add, and then we can go paragraph, and then we can just go return. So essentially, if it's less than the limit, return to the parent. So it doesn't, and then anything after this is over the limit. So we can then basically say we need to split. So essentially we need to find this full stop in the middle of this is an interesting one, because we need to find a character in the middle of a string and literally look left and right until we find it. Why shouldn't we use very projects. So we need to split it. So let's have a look at substring. What's the length? What's index of? 12. So if we got index of, that's 12. Just trying to have a quick look at index of. I did want an indices of. I'm wondering whether I can just get the indices of. Collection of the first occurrence. We need to get the indices. This is why I wrote it, because I actually want all of them. And I have a function for that. So, how we're going to do that, we need to write another function. Get indices. Oh, I can spell indices. Great. So this will get multiple. Why this is functional is because then we can just pass string I is equal to 0, I is less than string dot limit or length will work. I no, we're not going to do that. Find a counter. And then we're going to have our result. The result is going to be this one. And what we're going to do here is we're going to have our counter, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to do multiple indexes of, and we're going to use our counter to index past the first one. Oh, let's call it previous. Previous index value. We also need an array. So essentially we can say here string index of char previous index value result is equal to -1 break. So if it can't find it, I'll exit. Like so. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to say, so previous index value actually we can just do this. Get rid of that. We don't need that. We can just keep basically iterating through like so. The result is not equal to -1. We can then go ahead and add the result to our array. Like so. And then following that, that will then go ahead and add all those items. And then we need to set, while we're doing that, we need to actually set the previous index value to be the result, and then we need to basically increment 1. We can't go result double plus because actually we can if we really want to. I'm gonna do it that way because I'm just a little concerned. Like I kind of need I need to explain that we're not doing anything with the result here. We're just adding 1 there. So we're not doing a plus plus because it'll add it to that, not to that. Not to this. So and then what we can say here is if array.count is equal to 0, return, and we can just say, we should say return -1 to be honest. We don't need any sort of fancy stuff here that can go, and then we can just return array. Let's give this a go. Add pipeline support, and we need a character. So let's just give our character to be. Let's just make it. So we have 2, which is 12, and 16, and 26. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, it's 0 base, remember. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay, cool. And then what we can do here let's just add some extra ones in here to see what it does. You can see that it's 27, 28, 29, 30. Let's actually just stick something else in there and see what happens. Yep, so you can see it returns -1 if it doesn't actually contain a sentence. Honestly, if it doesn't contain a full stop, I have no bloody idea. People should be using the English. Yeah. Interesting. I think we can use this for the time being, and then we can obviously refactor it as per needed. But now, because we have this, what we can actually do is we're over the limit, so we actually need to split. But what we can do is essentially we can just grab the middle value from a string. So we need to split based on the sentence. We need to split at the end of a sentence. Sentence. I don't think it's based on sentence. Let's see. So what we can do here is essentially we need to split at the end of the sentence. Great, we've done that. Oh, lucky I just wrote that out. And then what we can do here now is we can basically take get indices of take our paragraph, and we're just going to go char off. Let's just call this sentences. So we can get our indices of using the char. That will give us a nice little return of an array of items. And then what we can do is we can actually find the closest middle one. So if we've got, we now need to work out what the middle one is. So what we're going to do is just going to copy this into my copy it in here so I can kind of use it as a workbench. Essentially what we're going to do is we have our items, so now we have the length. Let's just get, I'll just call it the string, like so. It's technically not an array or anything like that. We'll just go ahead and we can go string, like so, and then we can go if we can go string dot let's see if we can get the middle. We've got length. We can go divided by 2. So what we can actually say is I'm just trying to work out how we're going to get the middle, because there's no 22 definite, so we kind of need to do a loose match on get roughly around the middle, hopefully. I know there's a data matching where you can do loose matching, and I'm wondering whether we can do that. That'd be cool, but I don't think it's possible. So, what we might need to do is we're going to need to, we can take the middle and then find the closest item. So I can say 12, 16, 27. Now we know the middle's 22. So it's going to be on the... So the first thing we need to do is round the middle. Get the middle. Let's just say middle of string. And then we're going to need to go divided by 2. I think we can do a maths.round. Something along those lines. So give the middle of the string. Oh, string.length. Middle of the string, we have 22. Great. Let's just go divided by 4. Actually, no, because it's going to still be even. Let's go divided by 3. That should be odd. Okay, perfect. So essentially, what we can do here then is we need to then, we've got the middle of the string. We need to look left and right, essentially for the closest item to that. So, the way that we can do that, if we have the middle, which starts at 22, we can say, get me the closest value from 22 to the end of the string, and then from 22 to the start of the string. So we're going to need to do, we can actually do some closest towards n. We can say here we can say middle of, oh, we can do this. We can say middle of string. I'm just thinking about how I want to do this, because essentially we're going to need to, we've got indices of, so we've still got the data here. So essentially what I need to do is grab the two values, those two values, from the beginning and the end. So, this is going to be a very interesting where object. So what we need to do here is, let's just call this indices. Let's just call this indices, like so. And what we can do here is we can say indices where, and then we can basically say, this is where we got to get the beginning, get the nearest, start. And we can call this nearest to middle. And then what we can do here is if we've got the nearest to the start, we can basically say here in our expression, middle of string, where indices indices is already referenced, so we can say $_ Oh, this is like a really tough query to write. I'm literally trying to work out how to write this. So for indices where, I don't think we can use indices. Just thinking, this is a tough query to write. So 15 characters. Because like naturally we just go, bam, there it is. So we can the first part is basically saying if it matches, we need to match it. So we can say is equal to middle of string, like so. Let's just call this exact match. Then let's go closest match. Or middle of string. How do we match it to basically essentially that? I think we need to say if value essentially needs to be in between the previous value or the next, the previous value if possible. Alright, now we actually getting to some serious code. So all we need to do here is we need to go 0 ... indices .length, and then we're going to go where object, we are going to index into our indices like so. I'm going to use an index because we actually need to look at the previous value, so we can say or, and then we need to say here, because we need to do a closest match from the beginning, we can say is not equal to 0, because we can't look backwards if it's not equal to 0, and start is, and then we can say we can just say -1 This is some serious where object right here. So we can say indices that -1, which essentially will look to the array value on the left, and then we can say is less than middle of string and is greater, actually just greater, this is going to be greater than, it won't be equal to, it'll be greater than. So essentially yep, so essentially get me that value, that's that, and I feel like this is gonna really break. And then we basically need to put an additional and in here, and we need to look forward. Oops. This is some serious where objecting. Same logic. Essentially what we do here is we say +1 is greater than, and that is less than. So we've done that. Yep, that needs to have an additional parentheses. So I think that should be enough to actually get our match to the middle. I'm now intrigued to see whether this is going to work. Let's see what happens. I think it's going to fail. Oh boy, that failed hard. Term OR is not recognized. Why is it not recognized? Where object? It's inside of a script block statement. Why is it doing that? Let's try and get this fixed for today, and then we will leave it there. So let's just quickly finish this up. Or was or having issues. Gotta put comments in here. No, still having issues. What was having issues before? Like literally that shouldn't have any issues. That worked. Completely failed out, but it worked. Okay, so there's none in the middle. So we need to fix our query to make sure we can always get the middle. Well, that's going to need to be an all there, because if it can't, it just gives me a 1. It just gives me a 1. Okay, so oh man, this is like, honestly, it's probably the hardest where object I've had to write in a very long time, because most of the time you just write a where object which does a really simple thing. This one's actually doing some very complex filtering. So why is it doing that? I'm like just trying to work out why it's. And I'm going to probably spend another 2 minutes on it before I move it into a file, and we're going to start debugging it. So if it's less than middle of a string, so it's going to iterate through each of the items within indices. Yep, so 6 items. Oh, sorry, 6 index values. So 6, actually 7 items. Sorry. So it's going to go through that. -1. If it's not equal to 0, yep. And indices -1, which makes it so if it's 1, it'll look at 0, is less than middle of the string, yep. And then indices is greater than the middle of the string. Actually, this needs to be an and. And then you have is not equal to 0. That's wrong. It's not equal to indices length. So if it's not equal to, so that will break it. So let's try that. Still nothing. So is you've got values not equal to that, and it's greater than the middle of the string, and then the value is less I actually don't think we need this, because returns a 1. Because if item -1 is 0 and it's less than, yep. And then if it's not at the length and indices +1, so if we say, I'm just going to say 1 + 1, oh, 0 + 1, which should be 1, it's 26. So if 26 is greater than the middle of the string, 15, okay, we can actually do this manually, to be honest. So we can actually say, so we've got 12, 26, 27. So the first step will be 12. So we can basically say is 12 less than the middle of the string? True. Yep. +1. So let's say the 26 Actually, no, it's going to be 26 like this. And it'll be 12 like this. Actually, I think that's true. 12 and 26. So essentially, so it's 1, it's index value 1, which is it's 26. Hang on, it's 26. Let's just try this. So we got 12 is less than 1. Yep. Yep, and 26 is greater than middle of string. Yep. So because it's 22, so it'll sit right in the middle there. I actually think that's going to work. Let me just test with 26 and 27. 26. It's false. 27 is false. Yeah, okay. So that's how it's going to work. So we can get the middle by doing this. So essentially that's an exact. I'm just going to go exact. This is a closest, like so. And we can say little middle, nearest to middle is 1. And we can then just say like so. It's 26. And that's how we split it. Alright, cool. Let's grab all that jazz. Jump back up in here. We need to split it. So now we've got our indices. I'm just going to actually call it indices. We're just going to call it middle of paragraph. And then it's going to go paragraph dot length divided by 2, like so. I'm going to call it nearest to middle, indices dot length, where object, indices, middle of string. Oh, we're going to middle of paragraph, middle of paragraph, middle of paragraph, and does this do any sort of? No, it doesn't do any. Oh, hang on, split paragraph. Okay. And then what we can do here, so we basically, we need to split the end of the sentence, and then split it. So we go, call this split paragraph. Actually, what we can do here, yeah, we can get a split paragraph. Let's go paragraph. Split, and then we can use our nearest to middle, like so. Once we've done that, we can then basically have our split paragraph, we can then type it again. If it meets the limit, the length limit, that's fine. We can pipe it to that, and then we can pipe it to for each object. Break that down like that, and then we can literally then go add like that. So essentially, over the character limit. Over the character limit, and then basically we're going to need to say we're split either using an exact or the closest. Okay, I should just get rid of that, we don't need that. Pass. Recurse and pipe into so, and then pipe into the output. Once we've done that, then what we can do here is we can then just do the right output. We actually return, and then we can say here, return right output paragraphs. Alright, so essentially what's happening here now, let's just kind of go through our code. So we can split our paragraph to specify a paragraph and our character limit. It will then look at that, create an array that we're going to use. It looks at the paragraph length, the limit, and then basically it's going to add. If it's less than the limit, then it'll just add the paragraph. Who cares? If it's over the limit, which is this is where the logic needs to come in, is we need to get the indices, essentially all the values of index of the full stop. We're then basically going to find the middle of the paragraph by using just dividing the length in half and then rounding it using the math, so we always have an even number. And then we're going to split either using an exact or a match, an exact match or the closest match. So obviously an exact match would be just the middle of the paragraph, it'll grab that, or the closest match would be either the indice is basically it needs to qualify it needs to be less than the middle and greater than the middle. So essentially that's what it does there. So it's less than the middle of the paragraph and greater than the middle of the paragraph. Then once it's done that, we need to then split it with nearest to middle variable. I'm just going to actually call this a middle. We split it on that value, and then we pipe the output back into split paragraph. And what I'm going to do is I need to pass the char in there. Like so. So we're recursively recalling this, and then basically on the output we're then re-adding it to paragraphs.add. So essentially we're just adding it all back. Once that's done, it will then return. Once its own iteration is completed, it will then basically write paragraphs out to the pipeline, which obviously, if it's nested, it'll then add it back to this. So essentially it's building up a giant collection, and then finally, once it's back to the top level one, it'll then return to it'll return back to the caller. So that's an interesting piece of code. Very, very intriguing piece of code. So we've split our paragraph. Let's go back down here. So, so where was it? It was vert rest body. So while the message body is less than the character limit, we actually don't need that. And what we can actually say, split paragraph, we can just pipe it straight into split paragraph, and then set the character limit. There's a lot of content here. And then the char limit is that. And so essentially it'll get all the message body, and then it's going to split it. I'm just going to call it messages. Because essentially it's going to potentially be an array. So we can split it, and it will only split if it needs to be split, so it's completely fine. And then we can size the request. So essentially we then need to actually add those messages. So what we can do on the output here, just go for each object, let's just drop it down there, and then what we need to do here is we need to say the body, and then we can just go plus equals that string. So it adds the string, and then we have our matching index, which we need to also add that. Now, what's our matching index going to be? Ooh, yeah, okay. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, what we're going to probably, well, let's leave it there for today. I think that's a ton of good work that we've done. Pick it up on, we can pick it up back next week. But I think we can leave it there for today. That was a really good outcome. I wrote a fair bit of code, got some cleanup done. Still not ready to send it to sentiment analysis, unfortunately. We're going to have to do a little bit more work with that. But I think we are getting fairly close to actually getting it resent back to sentiment analysis and sending it correctly. That's the main thing. So it actually will batch the job correctly, and we're not sending some sort of half-assed version. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you liked it, subscribed, and yeah, we'll go from there. So yeah, I'll be streaming. I might be streaming next Tuesday. I'm not entirely sure, because I might be doing another talk. So if you're, I'll definitely announce it on Twitter if I'm doing a stream. But if I'm not, then that is the reason why. But if I am, fantastic. So we will be back then, and we'll hopefully it'll be either that or next Saturday. But I'm hoping it'll be next Tuesday. But if not, we'll be back next Saturday, carrying on with this and finishing it up. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.